shook with fear, and he suddenly let out a loud, terrifying scream. Madness! Someone shouted from the crowd, and panic spread through the gathering. Uche rushed to his son's side. A long time ago, Eze was born in the small vibrant village of Obunike. The village was surrounded by tall palm trees and rich green fields that stretches as far as the eyes could see. Obunike was a place where the sun always seemed to shine, and the people were as warm and welcoming as the earth beneath their feet. Eze's father, Uche, was one of the most respected men in Obunike. A tall, strong man with a strong and great strength. Uche was known for his wisdom and his bountiful yam harvest. The people of Obunike often sought his counsel, and he was a leader in every sense of the word. Eze's mother, Nneka, was the light of their home. She was kind and gentle with a heart as big as the sky. Nneka had a way of making everyone around her feel special, whether it was through her warm smile or the delicious meals she prepared. She was loved by all, but no one loved her more than Eze. However, when Eze was just 5 years old, tragedy struck their family. Nneka fell gravely ill, and despite the efforts of the village healer, she passed away. Her death left a void in Uche's heart and a deep sadness in their home. Eze, too young to fully understand the loss, felt as though the warmth had been taken away from his life. Life in Obunike continued, but it was never quite same for Eze and his father. A year after Nneka's death, Uche remarried. His new wife, Ife, was different from Nneka in every way. Where Nneka had been gentle, Ife was harsh. Where Nneka had been warm, Ife was cold. Ife had a sharp tongue and little patience, and she wasn't kind to Eze. Ife treated Eze with cold indifference, often scolding him for the smallest things. She never missed an opportunity to remind him that he was not her child. Eze, who had once been full of life and laughter, grew quieter, retreating into himself as he tried to navigate the new reality of his life. Despite the challenges at home, Eze grew up strong and resilient. He was hardworking, just like his father, and he quickly became known in Obunike as a young man of great potential. His friends admired him for his strength, his kindness, and his determination to make something of himself, even in the face of adversity. But beneath Eze's calm exterior, there was a sadness that he carried with him, a longing for the love and warmth he had lost with his mother's death. That longing would shape his life in ways he could never have imagined. As Eze grew older, he became more involved in the daily life of Obunike. He helped his father in the fields, planting yams and cassava, and he took pride in the hard work that was the backbone of their village. The people of Obunike respected Eze for his dedication and admired him for his strength. One day, as Eze was returning from the market with a basket full of yams balanced on his head, he decided to take a detour by the river that ran through the village. The river was a peaceful place, its water clear and cool, and Eze often went there to think. As he approached the river, he noticed a young woman sitting by the water's edge. Her hands moved gracefully as she walked, and she hummed a soft tune that blended perfectly with the sound of the flowing water. Eze was mesmerized by her beauty, her presence like a breath of fresh air in his life. The young woman looked up and caught Eze's gaze. She smiled, and Eze felt his heart skip a beat. He had never seen anyone so beautiful, so full of life. "Good afternoon," Eze said, his voice steady but filled with curiosity. "Good afternoon," the young woman replied, her voice as gentle as the breeze that rustled the palm trees. "My name is Eze," he said, taking a step closer to her. "I'm Ada," she replied, her eyes sparkling with kindness. They talked for a while, sharing stories about their families and their lives in Obunike. Eze learned that Ada had recently moved to the village with her family from a neighboring village called Umueze. She was the eldest daughter of a respected farmer, and she was known for her gentle nature and hard-working spirit. As they spoke, Eze felt a connection with Ada that he had never felt with anyone before. There was something about her that made him feel at ease, something that reminded him of the warmth and love he had lost when his mother passed away. From that day on, Eze and Ada became close friends. They would often meet by the river, talking and laughing as they watched the water flow by. Eze found peace in Ada's presence, a sense of belonging that he had been missing for so long. As their friendship grew, so did Eze's feelings for Ada. He knew that she was the one he wanted to spend the rest of his life with, and he was determined to make her his wife. But little did he know that the path to happiness would be filled with unexpected challenges and dark, unseen forces. The time had come to Eze to introduce Ada to his family. In Obunike, it was a tradition for a young man to bring his future wife to meet his parents before any marriage could be considered. Eze was excited but also nervous about how his stepmother Ife would react. One evening, after the sun had dipped below the horizon and the village was bathed in the soft glow of the moon, Eze approached his father. Uche was sitting outside their hut, mending a fishing net by the light of a small oil lamp. His face was lined with years of hard work, but his eyes still held the wisdom and strength that Eze admired. "Papa, I need to talk to you," Eze said, his voice steady but his heart pounding. Uche looked up from his work and nodded. "What is it, my son? Sit down here. Let's talk." "There is a girl," Eze began, feeling his heart race even faster. "Her name is Ada. She is from a good family, and I want to marry her," he stammered. A slow smile spread across Uche's face. "Marriage is a good thing, Eze. I am glad you have found someone who makes you happy. Bring her to meet us. It is important that we know her before we proceed." Eze felt a wave of relief wash over him. His father's approach meant everything to him, but deep down he was worried about how Ife would react. A few days later, Eze brought Ada to his house. She was dressed in a beautiful wrapper, her hair neatly braided, and her face glowing with happiness. As they approached the house, Eze's heart pounded in his chest, both with excitement and a twinge of fear. Uche greeted Ada warmly, welcoming her into their home. He asked her about her family, her upbringing, and her hopes for the future. Ada answered with grace and humility, impressing Uche with her pose and kindness. But Ife, who had been watching silently from the corner of the room, did not share Uche's enthusiasm. She had never shown Eze any affection, and now, seeing him happy with Ada, a dark jealousy began to brew in her heart. As Ada spoke, Ife's mind raised. She had never wanted Eze to be happy. She had always seen him as a burden, a reminder of Uche's first wife, Nneka, who had been loved by everyone, and now seeing Eze bringing home a woman who might give him the happiness she herself had never known, if he felt a bitter anger rise within her. That night, after Ada had left, Ife confronted Uche. "Why are you so eager to welcome this girl into our home?" she asked, her voice sharp and accusing. Uche frowned, taken aback by the harshness in her tone. "What do you mean, Ife? Eze is our son. Shouldn't we support him in finding happiness?" "Eze is your son, not mine," Ife snapped. "I have never seen him as my own son, and I will never do. I will not allow this marriage to happen." Uche's eyes hardened. "Eze has done nothing to deserve your hatred, Ife. He is a good boy and he deserves to be happy." But Ife was not swayed. She was determined to stop the marriage, even if it meant bringing harm to Eze. As the days passed, Ife's jealousy and bitterness grew. She couldn't stand the thought of Eze finding happiness with Ada. She knew that if Eze married Ada, he would finally have the family he had always dreamed of, and that was something Ife could not allow. One night, as the moon hung low in the sky, Ife decided that she needed to take matters into her own hands. She had heard whispers of a powerful witch who lived in the neighboring village of Amuwo. This witch was known for her dark magic, capable of bending the will of anyone who crossed her path. Ife knew that seeking out the witch was dangerous, but she was desperate. Early the next morning, before the village had fully awakened, Ife set out for Amuwo. The journey was long and treacherous, but Ife was fueled by her hatred for Eze and her determination to stop the marriage. When she finally reached the witch's hut, it was nestled deep within a thick forest, hidden from a praying eyes. The air was very thick with the scent of burning herbs, and a strange mist hung over the ground. The witch, an old woman with eyes as sharp as a hawk's, was sitting by a fire when Ife arrived. She looked up, her gaze piercing through the mist, and an evil smile spread across her wrinkled face. "What brings you here, woman of Obunike?" the witch asked her, her voice as cold as the air around them. "I need your help," Ife replied, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and determination. The witch raised an eyebrow. "And what kind of help do you seek?" "I want to stop a marriage," Ife said, her eyes narrowing. "I want the boy to suffer. I want him to lose everything." The witch's smile grew wider, her teeth gleaming in the firelight. "Very well, but know this, Ife. Once this course is set in motion, there is no going back. The madness will take hold of him, and he will lose everything." Ife smiled for a moment, but her hatred for Eze was stronger than her fear. "I understand," she said, her voice cold and resolute. "Do it," the witch began to chant, her voice rising and falling in strange, airy rhythm. She threw herbs and powders into the fire, causing it to flare up and fill the room with thick, choking smoke. Ify watched in silence as the witch worked her dark magic, her heart filled with a twisted sense of satisfaction. When the ritual was complete, the witch handed Ify a small punch filled with a strange black powder. "Sprinkle this on Eze's bed," the witch instructed. "Once he comes into contact with it, the curse will begin. He will slowly lose his mind, and his life will fall apart." Ify took the punch, her hands trembling. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The witch nodded, her eyes gleaming with a sinister light. "Remember, if you choose this path, the consequences are now out of your hands." If he left the witch's hut, the pouch clutched tightly in her hand. As she made her way back to Obunike, she couldn't help but feel a sense of dread creeping over her. But she pushed the feeling aside, convincing herself that she was doing the right thing. The day of Eze and Ada's wedding arrived, and the village of Obunike was filled with joy and celebration. The villagers had decorated the paths with colorful flowers, and the sound of drums and floats filled the air. It was a day that everyone had been looking forward to, a day of love and happiness. Eze stood tall and proud, dressed in his finest clothes. His heart was filled with excitement as he prepared to marry the woman he loved. Ada too was radiant with happiness, her eyes shining with love as she looked at Eze. But as the wedding ceremony began, something strange started to happen. Eze felt a sudden wave of dizziness, and his vision blurred. He tried to steady himself, but his legs felt weak, and his head throbbed with pain. The elders continued with the ceremony, unaware of Eze's growing discomfort. But Ada noticed the change in Eze's expressions and a look of concern across her face. "Eze, are you okay?" she whispered, reaching out to touch his arm. Eze tried to respond, but his words came out in a jumbled mess. His heart raced and a cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He could feel something dark and terrible taking hold of him, something that he couldn't control. The villagers began to murmur in confusion as they watched Eze's strange behavior. His eyes darted around widely, and he started to mutter incoherently. His body shook with fear, and he suddenly let out a loud, terrifying scream. "Madness!" someone shouted from the crowd, and panic spread through the gathering. Uche rushed to his son's side, trying to calm him down, but Eze was beyond help. He pushed Uche away, his eyes filled with a madness that no one could understand. He tore at his clothes, his mind unraveling as the curse took full control of him. Ada, tears streaming down her face, tried to reach out to Eze, but he didn't recognize her anymore. His mind was lost, consumed by the darkness that Ify had unleashed upon him. The wedding ceremony was thrown into chaos as the villagers fled in fear. The once joyous occasion had turned into a nightmare, and Eze was at the center of it all. Uche carried his son back home, his heart heavy with worry and confusion. Eze had lost all sense of reality, his mind trapped in a dark, twisted world. He mumbled incoherently, his eyes wide and unfocused. Ada too was heartbroken. The man she loved had been taken away from her by some unseen force, and she was powerless to help him. If he watched from a distance, her face expressionless, she had expected satisfaction from seeing Eze suffer, but instead a cold emptiness settled in her heart. The cause had worked, but the consequences were far more severe than she had anticipated. Back at home, Uche laid Eze down on his bed, his hands trembling as he tried to soothe his son. But Eze continued to thrash and scream, his mind unraveling further with each passing moment. Uche felt a deep sense of despair, unsure of how to help his son. What has happened to him? Uche whispered to himself, his voice filled with anguish. Ada knelt beside Eze's bed, tears streaming down her face. She held his hand, hoping that somehow her presence would bring him back to her. But Eze's grip was weak, his eyes distant and clouded. "We need to find him help," Uche said, his voice shaking. "The village healer may know what to do, but the healer, an elderly woman named Aunty Ngozi, could do little to ease Eze's suffering." She examined him carefully, her wrinkled hands moving gently over his head and chest. Her face grew more concerned with each passing moment. "This is not ordinary illness," Aunty Ngozi said, her voice grave. "There is something dark at work here, something unnatural." "What do you mean?" Uche asked, his heart sinking. Aunty Ngozi shook her head. "I do not know, but whatever it is powerful. We must seek help from beyond this village." Uche knew what she meant. In their culture, there were spiritual leaders known as Dibias, men and women who were believed to have the power to communicate with the gods and spirits. They could see beyond the physical world and might be able to uncover the truth behind Eze's madness. "I will go," Uche said, his voice filled with determination. "I will find a Dibia who can help my son." The next morning, Uche prepared for his journey. He knew it would be long and difficult, but he was willing to do whatever it took to save his son. He packed a small bag with food and water, and before he left, he knelt down beside Eze's bed, his heart heavy with worry. "Stay strong, my son," Uche whispered, brushing a hand over Eze's forehead. "I will find a way to bring you back." Ada, who had stayed by Eze's side all night, looked up at Uche with red-rimmed eyes. "Please, find someone who can help him," she pleaded, her voice trembling with emotion. "I will," Uche promised, his voice steady despite the fear gripping his heart. He knew that time was of the essence. If the curse was not lifted soon, Eze's mind could be lost forever. Uche set out on foot, heading towards the distant village of Omochukwu, where a powerful Dibia named Umuosu was said to reside. The journey would take several days, and the path was fraught with dangers. But Uche pressed on, his love for his son driving him forward. As he walked, Uche's mind raced with questions. What had caused Eze's sudden madness? Who or what was behind it? He thought of Ife, but quickly dismissed the idea. Despite her coldness, he could not believe that she would wish harm on Eze. But the thought lingered, a dark shadow in the back of his mind. After 2 days of travel, Uche arrived in Umuchukwu, exhausted but determined. He found the hut of Dibia Nwosu, a small weather structure surrounded by tall palm trees. The air was thick with the scent of burning incense, and the sound of chanting could be heard from within. Uche approached the entrance, his heart pounding. He knocked on the wooden door, and after a moment it creaked open to reveal an elderly man with piercing eyes and a long grey beard. Nwosu's presence was commanding. His eyes seemed to see straight into Uche's soul. "Come in," Nwosu said, his voice deep and resonant. Uche entered the hut, the air inside heavy with weight of spiritual power. The walls were lined with shelves filled with strange objects, animal bones, dried herbs, and carved wooden figures. In the center of the room, a small fire burned, casting flickering shadows across the floor. "I have come to seek your help," Uche said, his voice filled with urgency. "My son, Eze, has fallen into madness. No one in our village can explain it. I fear there is something unnatural at work." Nwosu nodded slowly, his eyes narrowing as he listened. "Tell me everything," he said. Uche recounted the events leading up to Eze's madness, the wedding, the sudden change in his son's behavior, and the healer's belief that something dark was at play. Nwosu listened intently, his face expressionless. When Uche finished, Nwosu closed his eyes and began to chant softly. The air in the hut grew thicker with energy, and Uche felt a strange sensation wash over him, as if the spirits themselves were listening. After a long moment, Nwosu opened his eyes and looked directly at Uche. "Your son is under a powerful curse," he said, his voice heavy with weight of the truth. "This curse was placed upon him by someone close to him, someone who wishes him harm." Uche's heart sank. He had feared as much, but hearing the words spoken aloud made reality of it all the more devastating. "Can the curse be broken?" Uche asked, his voice trembling with hope. "It is possible," Nwosu replied, "but it will not be easy. The curse is strong, and it is rooted in deep hatred. We will need to perform a cleansing ritual, but first I must find out who is responsible." Nwosu reached for a small patch of white chalk and began to draw intricate symbols on the ground around the fire. As he walked, he spoke to Uche in a low, steady voice. "There are forces at play here that go beyond what we can see, but the spirit will reveal the truth. Prepare yourself, Uche, for what you are about to witness may be difficult to bear." Uche nodded, his heart heavy with fear and anticipation. He knew that the path ahead would be fraught with danger and uncertainty, but he was willing to face whatever challenges lay in his way to save his son. As Nwosu began the ritual, the air in the hut grew thicker with spiritual energy. Uche watched as the symbols on the ground began to glow, and the flames in the fire danced with a life of their own. The shadows on the walls twisted and writhed as if the spirits themselves were moving within them. Nwosu's voice rose in a powerful chant, calling upon the spirits to reveal the truth. Uche felt a strange sensation wash over him again, as if he were being pulled into another world, a world beyond the physical realm. Suddenly, the fire flared up, and a vision appeared before Uche's eyes. He saw Ife standing in the dark forest, speaking to a shadowy figure. He saw the exchange of the cursed powder, the ritual performed by the witch, and Ife's cold, determined expression. Uche's heart chattered as the truth was laid bare before him. The woman he had trusted, the woman he had brought into his home, was the one responsible for his son's suffering. If he had cursed Eze, driven by hatred and jealousy, as the vision faded, Uche fell to his knees, his heart heavy with grief and anger. Nwosu placed a hand on his shoulder, offering him a measure of comfort. The truth is painful, but now you know, Nwosu said softly. We must act quickly if we are to save your son. Uche nodded, his mind racing with thoughts of how to confront Ife, how to protect his son, and how to lift the curse that had been placed upon him. With a heavy heart, Uche made a long journey back to Obunike. The truth of Ife's betrayal weighed on him like a stone, and the pain of knowing that the woman he had shared his life with had caused such harm was almost unbearable. But he had no choice. He had to return and confront her. When he finally arrived in Obunike, Uche found the village in a state of unease. The news of Eze's madness had spread like wildfire, and the villagers were filled with fear and sorrow. Many had kept their distance from Eze's home, unsure of what to do or how to help. Ada was the first to greet Uche when he returned. She ran to him, her eyes filled with desperation. Did you find help? Did you find any help? Did the Dibia tell you what is wrong with Eze? She asked, her voice trembling with hope. Uche took a breath, his heart aching as he looked into Ada's tearful eyes. He knew that the truth would be difficult for her to hear, but she deserved to know. Yes, I found the truth. I found the Dibia, Uche said, his voice heavy with the weight of what he had learned. And he revealed the truth to me. Eze is under a curse, a powerful one, and it was placed on him by someone close to us. Ada's eyes widened in shock. Who? Who would do such a thing? Uche hesitated for a moment, then spoke the name that had haunted him throughout his journey. Ife. Ada's face paled and she stumbled back, her hand covering her mouth in disbelief. No, it can't be. It can't be Ife. I saw it with my own eyes, Uche said, his voice trembling with emotion. She went to a witch in the forest and asked for a curse to be placed on Eze. She did this out of hatred, out of jealousy. Ada's eyes filled with tears as she tried to process the revelation. But why? Why? Why would she do this? I don't know, Uche said, his voice choked with sorrow. But we must confront her and stop this curse before it's too late. Ada nodded, her face set with determination. Together they made their way to Ife's home, their hearts heavy with the knowledge of what they had to do. Did Uche confronted Ife about his findings? What do you think would be her reaction? And did Eze actually recovered from the madness? Find out in part 2. Please do not forget to give this story a thumbs up, subscribe and share to your loved ones.